been through the fire and the rain.
Hello, everyone. This is Carolina Diamond Epiphany of Change, Dr. Rogers, bringing you another discussion on seeking justice in our justice system. And I'm going to continue with this discussion while things continue to happen in the news and in our everyday lives that are relevant to what we have been discussing for the last few months. Today, I'm going to bring you 3 different cases that I want you guys to really review and research so that we can have further conversation on what we see, what we think is fair, what we think is not fair, but just for us to start, working on making informed decisions and informed opinions based on research rather than information that we received from a blogger or just one media outlet or whatever. So here's the first case.
Another major story tonight. There is growing outrage in Fort Worth, Texas, over the deadly shooting of a black woman in her own home by a white police officer. Well, today the officer resigned before officials could fire him. Omar Villafranca now with new details in the case and reaction from the victim's family.
Interim Fort Worth Police Chief Ed Krause said there was nothing on Officer Aaron Dean's body camera video that justified shooting through a window and killing Atatiana Jefferson.
Put your hands up! Show me your hands!
Nobody looked at that video and said there's any doubt that this officer acted inappropriately.
Krause said Officer Dean resigned this morning and is not cooperating with investigators.
Had the officer not resigned, I would have fired him for violations of several policies, including our use of force policy.
Atatiana Jefferson. Jefferson was a graduate of Xavier University and worked in pharmaceutical equipment sales. She was an avid gamer who loved playing with her nephew. On the night she was killed, they had left the doors open to let a little breeze come through. According to Atatiana's 8-year-old nephew, his aunt drew her gun after hearing noises outside of their house while they were playing video games. Jefferson was trying to protect herself and her 8-year-old nephew from what she thought was an intruder when she was killed early Saturday. Body camera footage released by the police department showed 2 officers peering into Jefferson's house through a pair of screen doors. After walking into the backyard, Dean shined a flashlight into a closed window and without identifying himself as police shouted, "Put your hands up, show me your hands." A split second later, Miss Jefferson was shot. Immediately after the shooting, police issued a statement saying that Dean was searching outside of the house when he saw someone in the window and perceived a threat and fired a single shot. Dean refused to let the investigators interview him. The other officer that was present told investigators that Dean was standing between her and the house at the time of the shooting, and the only thing that she could see was Jefferson's face through the window when Dean opened fire. After police made it a point to show that Jefferson had a weapon, the Fort Worth mayor told people to disregard the weapon because it was irrelevant. Jefferson was in her own home caring for her 8-year-old nephew. The civil rights attorney, Lee Merritt, said that Jefferson had a right and a license to carry the gun, and that they were trying to find a way to blame the victim. Dean was charged and released on a $200,000 bond. The second case that I want to bring to you guys involves a gentleman by the name of Cody Gregg, who was riding his bicycle on August the 12th at approximately 10:30 p.m. when officers noticed that he didn't have any rear lights on his bike. They tried to stop him. He pedaled harder and eventually ditched the bike and ran on foot. When they caught up to Greg, they searched his backpack and they found a large clear plastic bag of white powder stuffed in a coffee can. The officer stated that a large amount of white powder substance that he believed to be cocaine later tested positive with a package weight of 45.91 grams. Greg was charged with the felony and pleaded guilty to cocaine possession with intent to distribute and was sentenced to 15 years in prison. After police found the white powder, he was charged with trafficking illegal drugs and jailed on a $50,000 bond. He initially pleaded not guilty. On October the 8th, he pleaded guilty to a lesser charge. 2 days after learning his fate, Greg was back in court, this time to withdraw his plea. The lab tests came back and they showed that the suspicious powder was nothing more than powdered milk. The charges were eventually dismissed and Greg was immediately released from jail. Now, this aspect of the justice system did work at the end, but it should have never reached this point in the first place. The question is, did the officer actually test the substance? And knowing that these tests often result in false positives, then it should be mandatory that they not only test once, twice, but possibly even 3 times. It's called due diligence. Everyone deserves it. So when the fate of their life is on the line, you would think that someone will go and take the extra step to make sure that they are given the right information. Now, the third case that I want to discuss involves a young lady by the name of Mary York. Miss York's 14-year-old son shot his way into a school before turning the gun on himself. And now Miss York is facing 6 felony charges. 6. She's been charged with 6 felony counts and 1 misdemeanor in connection with her son. The Indiana mother who tipped off the police to her 14-year-old son's school shooting plot that resulted in his death is now facing these felony charges. On December 13, 2018, Mary York contacted the police department telling them that her son had taken her boyfriend hostage at gunpoint and was about to head to his former middle school where he had been bullied in the past. A probable cause affidavit showed that Miss York withdrew her son from a mental health treatment program after 10 days because it wasn't covered by insurance and she couldn't afford it. I'm not quite sure how that would be. You know what? Let me just continue on with the case. The affidavit also stated that Miss York didn't make her son take his prescribed medication because he complained that it made him feel weird, and there were no documents to prove that York took him to school to address the bullying issues that he was dealing with. Ms. Short believes that she shouldn't be held accountable for her son's actions. She also stated that her son never expressed any homicidal ideations and that the doctor never informed her of her son's diagnosis. She told a media outlet that instead of blaming her and her son, they needed to be blaming the school system and the medical facility that let her take her son out of mental health treatment. Now, that's something to think about. Who should be held responsible? Who's liable? So I have a few questions. Is this justice? For them to hold the mom accountable for what their son did? Should the mother be held responsible for her child's actions? Should parents be punished if they cannot afford needed treatment? Or is law enforcement just looking for someone to blame so that they don't have to take responsibility? When seeking justice, we must remain open-minded. The task of being open-minded and free-thinking individuals is on us. We must protect our ears from slander because it comes at us in all directions and there is an agenda and business to it. We must scrutinize what we hear at all times. We must continue to do our research so that we are well informed. In the first case, the discussion that we're having right now, or that I'm interested in right now, is what's going to happen after the fact. So the police department did act swiftly, or let me say the ones that are in charge did act swiftly with addressing Mr. Dean. And they did say that it was their intention to fire him, but he was allowed to resign. I don't think that they should have allowed him to resign with dignity. They should have went ahead and said that he was fired, but that's neither here nor there. And the fact that he was charged with murder. Now, I want to know how you guys feel about this $200,000 bond. And also looking at the fact that we've had two recent cases where officers were actually charged, and this is something that we haven't been seeing too much of. So is that representing a change in times, or are these just isolated cases? In the second case with Mr. Cody, my question or my issue with this case, my personal issue is, number one, why would you take him to court or sentence him for a charge? So my question would be, did you actually test the powder to begin with? Or was the police report just pencil whipped and you guys just put down a positive result and an estimated amount? Because it seems funny that a lab test is done for the courts and all of a sudden it's showing that it's negative and he's immediately off. So I'm wondering if they did what they were supposed to do at the beginning, because all they had to do was just check the results against each other to make sure that they weren't getting, a false positive. So I'm wondering about that. And I don't know. The last thing, and I guess this one is kind of interesting to me, just working in the mental health field. And I know that they're trying to crack down on the school shootings and stuff like that. But do you guys think that it's fair for them to hold the mom accountable for what her son did? I mean, the son tied up the boyfriend, took him hostage. He goes to the school with all these, this ammo, and he has these guns. Now, my first question would be, where did he get those things from? Did they belong to the boyfriend? But just them saying that she was being charged because she stopped his mental health treatment, or or her saying that she didn't go because she couldn't afford it. I mean, if someone says that they can't afford something, how do you punish someone if they can't afford treatment? And the second thing was with making him take the medication. You know, once the child is no longer a child that you can hold down, I mean, can you really force them to take their medication? I don't know. I want to see what you guys think on this when we're talking about justice. Like, we have another case where people want the parents held accountable for, you know, some of the things that were done, and it doesn't seem as if the parents are going to be held accountable. But in this particular case, you're basically saying that you have a mom that's at a financial disadvantage, and she's receiving federal charges because of that disadvantage. So where do we draw the line? Do we make parents responsible for all of their children's actions? How far does that go? When arresting someone on drug charges, are we making sure that everything is done that is supposed to be done, that due diligence that we're always speaking about? And in that case, it's important to remember, and I put a quick clip in the video, but you have a lot of people that actually plead guilty to charges just because they're tired of sitting in jail. And I want you to think about some other cases that are going on right now and think about what I'm saying. A lot of times you're kept in jail for a long time with the hopes that you will decide to plead to something. So one thing I've learned in this system is just because someone has entered a plea of guilty or has even been found guilty, that doesn't necessarily mean that we know the whole story. So keep that in mind whenever we're making judgments on particular situations. And also remember that, again, at any time, this could be you in this situation. Or if not this situation, any situation. And you're hoping that the justice system works in your favor. Not that they find you innocent when you're guilty, but that they actually do the right thing the way that it's supposed to be done. Like I said, you guys, let me know what you think about the cases, and we'll come back and have another conversation. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you next time.